Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask a ton of questions, especially today. My guest is Mike Mahony. Mike is the host of Nightly Rant and Fitness Freedom. He ran for office in Orange County. We're going to get into that here in a little bit, but just a real quick side note. Those of you that want to be bitter pills, you can visit patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. And for a mere $2 a month, you can have the privilege of calling yourself a bitter pill. And as we move forward with the show, we'll be bringing on graduated tiers and fabulous prizes and all that kind of stuff. But right now we're just getting our first month out of the way and jumping in all the, I guess, the usual acrobats that you have to promote a show. So we're really excited about what's been going on, and a lot of streaming and a lot of folks passing the show along. So I really want to thank you all for that. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Hey, Mike. So real quick, we talked a little bit before. And I was on your show last week, which sounded great, by the way. I really appreciate you having me on. Obviously,
I
sounded kind of like a crazy person, so thank you for not completely, editing it out or getting rid of it. Like, oh, this is not going to be usable. But I definitely wanted to, kind of talk about a bunch of things today. But you ran for office in Orange County, right?
Yes, I did. I ran for Orange County Supervisor. And
what party did you run that for?
I was running as a Libertarian. It was a nonpartisan office, but I was running as a Libertarian. And interestingly, even though it was a nonpartisan office, the entire election process, all anyone asked all three candidates was, what party are you with? Mm-hmm. So it's similar to what we discussed on my show, where the the identity politics came out big time and really shouldn't have. It really is irrelevant. But I think people are concerned because since 2008, they've had nothing but Republicans running that board, 5 Republicans every single election cycle. And I think people are starting to feel like there's not enough diversity on the board. And so I thought I had a perfect shot because being a Libertarian, I'm sort of a little bit like both parties. I suppose you could say the best of both parties pushed into the middle somewhere. Mm-hmm. So, and I found from talking to people that we agreed on a lot of things, we disagreed on a lot of things, but we were able to find common ground. Whereas when I would watch, we did a debate where there was 3 Democrats and myself, we pretty much all agreed on most of the issues. But then we did a debate where there was the Republican lady was involved, and it was a shit show.
Really? What happened?
She just didn't agree with anything. Every solution we had for problems, she came up with a reason why it wouldn't work. Then when she would be pressed on why she thought those were reasons why they wouldn't work, she really didn't have an answer.
That was my next question. Was it more platitudes, or did she actually have some facts?
It was more platitudes. It felt like we had solutions, and it concerned her that we had solutions. So she was going to do whatever she could. She was the incumbent, so she was going to do whatever she could to poke holes in the solutions that we provided.
Right.
It ended up making her look really stupid. Well, there was some press on her about that, about how, wow, not only can she not do her job, but she really doesn't even have a clue what the answers are to the problems that she's facing.
Right. And sort of just checked out, and she's been at it since 2008, you're saying?
This woman, there's a 2-term limit, so this will be her second term.
Okay.
So she did end up winning. And I mean, we have the crazy jungle primary system here in California where you take every candidate and just stack them in the line, and whoever's in the top 2.
Right.
If you complicated, you have to be. Nobody can win more than 50.1%. Mm-hmm. So if someone wins 50% or less, and then the top 2 move on to November. Well, in this case, the incumbent, she got like 63% of the vote.
Okay.
And moved on. But I mean, my other opponent and I, we were up against a woman who had $580,000 in her campaign war chest. Her husband runs the California Republican Party here in California. He used to be the chairman of the National Republican Party.
Wow.
So, they're like best friends with, as you call him, Cheeto Jesus.
Ah.
I love that name, by the way.
I ripped that off. I wish I invented it, but thank you. In fact, it was some Republican tweet guy who couldn't stand him, and I just thought it was hilarious because when you look at it, he's brittle, he's orange, he's tacky, and people worship him. So there you go.
Have you ever Googled Cheeto Jesus?
No, I have not.
Anyone who wants a little bit of humor should Google that. It's one of the things, you mentioned you were on my show and you had brought that term up, and so we always put out an Instagram post that's relevant to the episode. And so I looked up Cheeto Jesus. Oh my gosh, I could have picked from hundreds of hilarious photos where they've kind of morphed Trump into a Cheeto. And it doesn't take a lot of work to lump that orange guy into an orange chip.
Right.
It wasn't too hard.
And especially he seems to have Tourette's. At this point, it's almost like watching the Britney Spears meltdown from about a decade ago when she was like shaving her head and sitting at the AM/PM with a soda. And like mascara was running, and you're kind of going, dude, what the fuck is happening to you? Like he gave some speech a couple of days ago, and it just was the most incoherent rambling, and they just cheered. It's just, I don't get it. But anyway, man. But so, well, and you make a good point because about a week ago, in fact, her interview is going to air this week. Good kid. I had an RNC person come in here, and it was just platitudes. And admittedly, she would tell me, "Well, I don't know those things." I'm like, "Well, then why doesn't the GOP support single payer health care, for example?" "Well, we don't want the government involved in our health care." Okay, well, that's a nice platitude, but the facts are that we have 45,000 people a year dying right now, and the government's involved in all our wars. So if we're spending $1 trillion on war, then why can't we do this? It was always back to the numbers, and I just kept getting. I think she's a brighter person than this. Obviously, she's younger too. But I was just getting these Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer type answers. You know what I mean? They were just platitudes. They weren't anything to do with the task at hand. It was just kind of airy fairy stuff that sounds great when you talk to other Republicans, but it doesn't make any sense when people are going, "Hey, what's 2 + 2? 5? Well, why? Why is it 5? Right.
I mean. I find that is a problem though with every party. I mean, like libertarians, we want the government out of our business. But when it comes down to it, when you ask, how about this? How are we going to cut? We could cut the spending right here, and then we could take that money and move it over here. Like one of my plans was we have a huge homeless problem in California. Huge. I mean, there's over 50,000 in LA County, and there's about 10,000 in Orange County that are out living on the street. And come to find out that Orange County and every county in the state is given money that's earmarked specifically for mental health and homelessness. And so Orange County has a mere $900 million that they've had for 3 years. Now, come to find out that every year it's earning $30 million in interest. So they have over $1 billion to spend on homelessness, and yet there's 10,000 people out on the street. So I gave a speech in front of a bunch of libertarians, and I went down my plan, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. They had a cow that I was going to spend public money, as they put it, on a social issue. And I said, well, here's the thing. Are they going to refund us that money that they took from us on our taxes?
That's right.
They said no. I said, so do you think it's ethical and moral that money is sitting in a bank account earning $30 million a year in interest, and we're doing nothing to help these people? And then they kind of, the thinkers in the group kind of calm down and go, oh, I see your point. Then the hardcore ones, no, it's the party line. We don't pay that money. And I mean, it's the same thing. Like you're talking about your Republican guest. She has no clue why her position is what it is, other than the party said so.
Right, and that's the challenge with platitudes. I mean, I like to tease my libertarian friends because they say the same thing, and I'm like, you do realize that we're not going to stop spending money. You do realize that. Yeah. You do realize that we're $21 trillion in debt, and coincidentally, the Department of Defense lost $21 trillion in the same amount of time that we amassed $21 trillion in debt. which makes sense when you see how much we spend on war, basically. And then they always like to say, well, like you said, the public money shouldn't go for social whatever. And I'm like, well, they're not going to stop taking the taxes. They're not going to stop with the sales tax. Like all of a sudden, we're not going to pay for Planned Parenthood, for example. So what, sales tax is going to go down? Probably not. Property taxes are going to go down? Probably not. That to me is more of an investment than, say, the idea of just, paying less in taxes and we're going to have smaller government. We're never going to have smaller government. We just have to ask a better question, which I think is, how do we better serve the people who pay the taxes? I don't know.
I agree with that. And that's, I struggled for a lot of years. I was a no party preference for probably 30, I'm 53, and probably 30 years of my life I spent as a no party preference because I couldn't stand either of the major two parties. They are both, and they've gotten, in 30 years, they've gotten probably a million times worse than they were 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't stand them before. I abhor them now. But the libertarians, there's a lot of things about their platform that speaks to me. Like you're talking about, using the military to defend our country, not to go be the police officer of the entire planet. That's not what the military was designed for. And I feel like instead of sticking to the hardcore libertarian principles of, never spend money on social issues, I think that you're absolutely right. There's a way to find money and spend that money in a reasonable way that actually fixes problems. One of the things I said with my homeless plan was, I see there's $1 billion there, but I'm not going to give it to a government entity to fix it. I'm going to take it from the government entity and say, all right, we're the client, we're the government, we're the client. We're going to pay these private organizations who are better equipped to handle the problem to go fix the problem. And then it's kind of a win-win because you help the little guy who's trying to make a living helping homeless people, and you help the homeless people. And then as the elected official, once the problem is solved, guess who gets all of the kudos? That's the thing they don't seem to understand. Mm-hmm. If you want to get to higher office in every single one of them, that's one of the reasons why the incumbent has so much money in the bank. She wants to run for U.S. Congress. Mm-hmm. And okay, you want to get there? Well, then show us what you're going to do. I mean, why should I vote for you to help run this entire country if you haven't? She's introduced 5 agenda items in 4 years. What exactly? Why do I want to send her to Washington and pay her a big salary? Right.
Well, it's like Hillary Clinton's Senate term. She was I think 8 years as a senator. Her name is on 3 pieces of legislation. Maxine Waters, 28 years, 3 pieces of legislation that she's pushed through. One was some Haiti BS that I think funneled right into the Clinton Foundation stuff, and then the other was naming a post office. And she bought a $4 million house in one of the. She's a congressperson in one of the poorest districts in California. And she got a $4 million house without listing a secondary income. And I'm sorry, a congressperson makes $190,000 a year. How are you getting a $4 million house? It just doesn't even compute. But the point that you were making a second ago that I kind of wanted to piggyback on was, you're talking about how bad the parties have gotten. It's just that they've become the same thing, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. There's literally no difference between Republicans and Democrats. In fact, when I would go out and talk, I got invited to a lot of events from all different types of people. And when you would talk about homelessness, they all had the same issue. Oh, those people are lazy. They're this. They're drug addicts. They're mentally ill. Well, sure, there's a percentage of all of that out there, but that doesn't mean we should help them get off the street.
Right.
And their answer, believe it or not, their answer around here anyway, I'm not sure how it is where you are, but their answer is to pass anti-camping ordinances so that you're not allowed to sleep on the streets at all. And the courts in turn have replied, that's great. If you want to keep them off your streets, then you need to provide resources for them to sleep because, hey, sleeping is a basic human right. You're allowed to sleep. Mm-hmm. And the courts say, if you have enough beds for your 10,000 homeless people, then we'll let you enforce your anti-camping ordinance.
That's right.
But if you don't, we're not going to allow that because you're violating their civil rights. And and I'm telling you, it didn't matter if they were Republican or Democrat. They had the same exact attitude. And really, the people are, and this is something we talked about, leading up to this show, is that people are the reason, the public is the reason people don't run for office. I'm 100% convinced that the public is why people do not run for office. They do nothing but try to find fault with everything you say. They throw personal insults at you. They make up stories. I had a woman claim that, years ago, I had gotten into an argument with somebody at a gas station. And it was just like a verbal, confrontation. And it was somebody that I knew. And a police officer pulled in, knew the person that I was having an argument with, and gave me a citation for disturbing the peace, which got dismissed, and, no issues there. Well, this woman had to come out and say, oh, he has harassment charges pending against him. He has a restraining order. And I said, prove it.
Right.
Show me the restraining.
Right.
Prove it.
Right.
I mean, and I don't take that shit. Like you're gonna, if you want to say that you think my homeless plan is crazy, that's your opinion. I'm fine with that.
Right.
But don't attack me personally with bullshit. There's probably plenty of skeletons in my closet that you could have found. That was not a skeleton in my closet. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that candidates face. Even at the city council level,
sure,
the lowest level, they're getting, there's a school district around here where there's one guy on the school board who doesn't like the two Democrats that are on the school board. And so he literally wanted to spend, you're going to love this, $350,000 to recall one of them who's up for re-election this November. And
wow.
He wanted to spend that money in June. So he couldn't wait 5 months. And that's the kind of thing. And it's all about personal attacks. Sure. They didn't dress nicely for the meeting. They said a cuss word in our closed session. Who cares?
Right.
I mean, I personally cuss all the time. I don't give a shit. But why is that a reason to recall a person? It's all about just attacking and attacking and attacking the other person. And, I was talking to a guy the other day who's running for city council in Huntington Beach here, and he's part of the problem. He's saying, I don't know how it works there, but here the cities, we elect city council. There might be 5 members, there might be 7 members.
Right.
And then they pick a person to be the mayor for a year.
Right.
And then the next year they pick a different person, and the next year they pick a different person. It's a figurehead, I mean, when you've got a city of 25,000 people, do you really need to have a dedicated mayor? I don't think so.
Probably not, no.
And he was complaining that voters, 9 out of 10 voters, don't know that they didn't elect the mayor. Well, how do you not know that? I mean, didn't you pay attention to what was on your ballot?
Right.
Did you ever check that box? I want Joe Blow for mayor. No, you never did that.
Right.
So how do you not know that? He's running around, and his thing is he's attacking his opponents and calling them fake mayors, that they're spreading fake news. It's the climate we're in right now. And yes, I think Trump being elected, it kind of opened up the locked door.
Sure.
And let all the crazies out.
Yeah.
But I think, those crazies were always there. Now,
100%. Now they got permission. Now they got permission. Yeah. And see, and this is the thing where, Trump shoots himself in the dick 3 times a day, right? And what pisses me off about all this like high-end gossip, which is what I call it, the fucking Russian scandal is going to be proven. Yeah, and by the way, I think Chelsea Handler had some tweet the other day, that he's kissing Putin's ass, that a known election fixture. I'm like, I'm sorry, the investigation's not done yet, you stupid twat. Quit saying it's a foregone conclusion when the investigation is not done. It's not finished. Mueller hasn't done anything. Manafort's in jail for all kinds of shit, nothing to do with the election. Lying to investigators, money laundering, dealing with a bunch of Ukrainian mobster guys. Nothing to do with the election. So nothing's been proven yet. But they keep doing all this nonsense and teabagging strippers and stuff like that nobody gives a shit about. And then what that does is that keeps people away from the real shit that he's doing. For example, in 2017, he dropped 30,000 bombs in Syria, right? Well, and they won't talk about that, because if they talk about that, then they got to talk about the 26,000 bombs that President Nobel dropped in 2016, President Nobel being Barack Obama. And and he ran out of bombs in 2015, like for 2 weeks, right before Christmas. They ran out of bombs. And so and so you're going, he dropped more bombs and more drones than George W. Bush. But they're in the middle of rehabbing Obama to try to help his legacy because he doesn't have one. He wiped out the entire Democratic Party across country. And with this neoliberal, neoconservative bullshit that he literally came in, exploded the banks, finished wiping out the unions, passed ACA, which, no one seemed to mind that there's already 30 million people off insurance when ACA was running for about 7-8 years. When Trump was trying to get his version, then they start freaking out. Oh, he's going to kick 24 million people off the plan. I go, well, that makes it 54 million people that don't have insurance now, then doesn't it? Because there was already 30 million that didn't have insurance, and 45,000 people a year die because of a lack of coverage. But you can't really talk about this shit when you're so focused on Russia. And I'll tell you, you talked about some public service things like the homeless deal and everything like that. Folks in that position, a single mom on WIC with a couple of kids, maybe a job or two, can give a shit about the Russia investigation. Everybody knows.
Exactly.
They don't have a feeling. They know. And no one's investigating the DNC. That was the biggest electoral fraud in the history of the country. And nobody's going,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right. When you got people, I have people tell me all the time that, I'm not a Trump fan. I did not vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary. I obviously, as a libertarian, I voted for Gary Johnson only because, you know what? When you have three fools, I'm going to take the one who's the least dangerous.
Well, you know what?
And he seemed like he.
I didn't think he was a fool.
What?
I mean, he fucked up on Aleppo. Oops. Okay. When I checked, Madam Head Injury fucked up in Libya. And I'm not talking about fucking Benghazi, right? When Trey Gowdy and all those guys are, going after about Benghazi, I'm like, wow, you're not asking the right questions. Why aren't you asking her why we were in Benghazi because 9 months prior we invaded Libya and bombed the fuck out of them and killed their president? And we're using the embassy to funnel weapons to a bunch of quote unquote moderate rebels that we were paying. Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the quote enemy. They didn't dare call them by name in the American press. Oh, we're supporting moderate rebels. Well, moderate rebels, my ass. Now you got 40 groups that run Libya, terror groups, and they got slavery now. Yay, Hillary. Now they're selling Yemeni slaves.
But my point is, I didn't like him. I didn't like her. But even during the 2016 elections, when I would hear something that was outrageously false, or had already been proven to be false, and someone would perpetuate that on social media, I would kick their ass about that.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm a real believer in I've noticed this, we've only become friends here, in the last month. And I've been noticing, a lot of the things that you say are exactly in line with how I think. Because I feel like, you know what? If you want to talk about the issues, talk about the issues. But be honest about the issues. Don't lie to people, because that is just creating more issues.
That's right.
So I have people tell me all the time, what do you mean there's no Russian collusion? I mean, look at Manafort. He's going to jail. Yeah, for money laundering and lying to the FBI. That's why he's going to jail. What does that have to do with the election? Explain that to me. So he was involved with some Ukrainian mobsters. So that means he fixed the election. Sure. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. Well,
and this is the thing, too. I would love to be a fly on the wall. Let's just say this bullshit did happen. So you're Vladimir Putin, and you're on the phone, you're like, listen, Donald, you have electoral college, no? Okay. We can't make this look too good, eh? So we give you electoral college, Hillary, she take popular vote. Da? Okay, da. Congratulations, Mr. President. Is that how that went down? Go suck a dick. Seriously,
exactly.
we're going to take the electoral college, but not the popular vote. Let's only fix half the election. Okay, stupid.
Well, here's the thing that I don't understand about that anyway, is that our own government stands up and says, look, we know they didn't change any vote counts anywhere. They did not change any vote counts anywhere. All they did was start a marketing campaign, essentially, to make Hillary look bad and make Trump look good. Isn't that what a PAC does? Don't they support a candidate so that they can spend as much money as they want on that candidate and get around all the campaign finance laws? And isn't that how a campaign is run? You point out your opponent's weaknesses so that people who are more like you will vote for you. I mean, that's called running an election.
Right.
So if our own government can stand up and say, we know for sure that they did not change any votes, All right. Well, then what's the problem here? Even if they did have that conversation that you just mentioned, what about that is illegal? Because from what I know, collusion in and of itself isn't illegal.
Well, it's not a this is why the press doesn't say conspiracy, because conspiracy is a felony. And they reserve that word for the quote-unquote crackpots. So they keep saying collusion. We believe they colluded. It's not a felony. It's just we colluded to get dinner. We decided where to go get dinner, you know. But to plan, to hatch a plot, to plan a crime misdemeanor takes two people or more. And this is the other thing that the Democrats hate to admit. It's a fact. She cheated Bernie in the primaries, and they were doing the Pied Piper strategy. Podesta was all over the media to push Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, the Christian jihadist, and Donald Trump, because those three were seen as reprehensible enough that Hillary could beat them, because her numbers her numbers tested through the floor. She just horrible candidate. And her arrogance, she thought she could just take the states that Obama took and not have to visit them. You know, it's like in 2000 when Al Gore lost, and it was, you know, that slim of a margin, and everyone's pissed about Ralph Nader. I go, first of all, it was Al Gore's race to lose. And if you lose Arkansas, where Bill Clinton is from, because you're too chicken shit to take him with you to Arkansas, and you lost your home state of Tennessee, both of which, if you won, you'd have beat George Bush's ass. But you couldn't even take your home state and the home state of your president. Well, maybe you got problems with your campaign. Maybe you got problems with your messaging.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe if people couldn't tell the difference between George Bush and Al Gore, you had a problem with messaging. You know, it's like comparing, and especially, I don't think Al Gore is this, you know, stalwart intellectual, but he's certainly brighter than George Bush. If you can't tell the difference between him and Alfred E. Newman, then you got some significant issues. You know, and this
exactly.
And this is the thing. This is the thing with what you're saying. You know, kind of get back to what you're saying. You know, people just know. They just know. That's why you had the inarticulate rage of the Trump phenomena. It was populist messaging. And, you know, everyone going on so precious about the elections, right? I mean, between 1948 and 2010, this is according to Carnegie Mellon, too, not exactly the most liberal think tank. The United States has participated in fucking around with 81 elections from 1948 to 2010. Okay? And this doesn't count military coups and assassinations, which we did a ton of those, too.
Right.
And so for people to look me in a straight face, well, they screwed with our democracy. Really? Really? They screwed with our democracy? Do you think we got one? We've got this big, gigantic party with two wings. One still talks to angels and doesn't like gay people. The other's a little bit more intellectual and they like gay people. That's about the only differences. They still suck the same Koch brother dick. They take money from big pharma, big insurance, big oil, big everything. The banks, they exploded the fucking banks. They just Democrats participated in deregulating the banks again. You know, and you're like, absolutely. You know what I mean? So it's maddening to hear you actually have to be in this environment trying to run for office and trying to stay to issues, and you know, Supervisor Platitudes, you know, gets to win by just talking her stupid shit because people are mindless sheep.
And then here's the thing, like I was mentioning about the woman who was talking shit about me. She goes online and uses the first sentence. This is my editorial opinion, period. That's supposed to improve all of the libelous comments that come after it. Mm-hmm. And what the hell is wrong with our society that we think that's okay, and let's distract from the issues? So how about we talk about what is the incumbent doing about the homeless situation? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you. This is an interesting part, too. There's a federal judge involved here in Orange County because one of the attorneys here got smart, picked up a couple of homeless people who were living in a riverbed, and said, hey, have you gotten offered any services by the government? No. Has the government helped you with this? No. Great. Well, we're going to sue because they're violating your rights. Well, this judge is taking it seriously, and this dude is out at 3 o'clock in the morning walking around homeless encampments, and he's trying to see what the issue is. So he says to the supervisors, you guys have fucked up. You have not fixed this problem. There's 5 grand jury reports that say the supervisors don't take this seriously. There was one where they had $145,000 in the budget for homelessness, and it was to hire a person to try to fix the homeless problem. That was the entire budget. So he tells them, look, I'm not tolerating this. His line is, I love what he says. He says, as a judge, I could issue an order today and tell you to spend all of that $1 billion to fix this problem. And you'd have to do it. But if I do that, I'm drawing a line in the sand that can't be erased. But if I let you guys work together, the cities and the county and the homeless advocates, and I let you all work together, you can respond to changes in the situation. What if, and his point is well taken, what if there was a huge recession tomorrow and another 10,000 people became homeless? It's going to change your plan.
Right.
And he's trying to say to them, guys, I'm pleading with you. Work together, because if I give an order, we're stuck with that. Mm-hmm. That is what you have to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he tells them, Board of Supervisors, we're meeting in court on Wednesday. You have to have a plan in place. And this was like early June. You have to have a plan in place by then. I need to know I need 3 homeless shelter locations identified. I need this, I need this, I need this. So the lovely incumbent that was running against me doesn't even show up for that meeting. Then
but you and the Democratic candidates showed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then get this. Then they have a Board of Supervisors meeting to discuss what the judge said in court after they missed that meeting. And she has to leave early because President Trump is landing at LAX and she needs to go there so she can meet him face to face. Tell me what that has to do with our issues. Like, why did you need to do that? And that's what we get here is we get people who are not seeing that as a problem. They think that she's this great patriot because she needed to go see the President of the United States, who, by the way, she hung out with and partied that night with.
Right.
So really, she could have just waited till the party and hung out with him. But no, she had to go greet him at the airport.
See, that's like
about what they could do next.
That's like out of touch Tsar of Russia shit. You know what I mean? It's like it's like Romanov crap.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like Nancy Pelosi getting up there saying, "Well, the Democrats don't want change." After the bloodbath in 2016, like, "Well, the Democrats don't want change." Really? They don't want change? I talked to somebody who's a DNC delegate that may come on the show, and she's running a couple of publicity campaigns for Kevin De Leon, who's running against Dianne Feinstein and people like that. And our little pre-interview, like you and I talked before, it was just nothing but her with the platitudes, and it was 45 minutes of me beating up on her. And I didn't want to. I just, whatever. It was like playing a fat kid in dodgeball. I just kept going after her. And she's a super delegate. And then at one point she started sounding like my girlfriend. And she goes, "Well, what do you propose to do, Mr. Smarty Pants?" And I'm like, well, since I'm not the paid Politico, I'll give you some tips. And you want to pay me six months for $500,000, I'll come in and fix your party. But first of all, you get rid of the super delegates. And if you want to have a $15 minimum wage, here's an idea, because business is freaking out about that. Well, why don't we knock about $300 billion off defense, which we don't fucking need? Close some bases. We have 1,300 that we know of. And why don't we give the Department of Labor money to have subsidies for like a McDonald's franchise owner? So say he can only afford to pay $11 an hour. Okay, great. Well, the Department of Labor makes up $4, right? That's a good use of funds. Let's have a federal jobs program like FDR had. Mount Rushmore didn't build itself with fucking contractors. We paid guys to go do it. And I had a friend of mine when I brought that up, he goes, "Well, what about the unions? They can cost the government a lot of money." You think Raytheon and Boeing and all those guys that make all that shit for us to drop on people, they don't have a union to deal with? They got a ton of unions to deal with. And that's why we pay the war machine what we pay them, because they got unions and they also are paid to make shit to blow people up. How about we, take our funds and spend them judiciously, like what you're talking about doing, which I think is one of the more practical. Yours is one of the more practical libertarian campaigns I've heard. Well,
that's because we were not. I purposely. My wife and I always say there's a few libertarians that we've met personally. I've seen plenty of other like this, but we've met a few personally that they like wear the tinfoil hat all the time, and that's never. First of all, if you ever want to be taken seriously as a candidate, that's not going to cut it. You can't tell people about how you're going to spend money on a space program so we can connect up with Martians and utilize their resources. That's craziness. But I'll tell you, it's again, I go back to every party has this kind of issue. When I did a candidates forum, there were 3 Democrats and me. We talked about a fish out of water. I didn't agree with most of what they had to say on the extreme issues, and one of them was, since you brought up $15 minimum wage, chew on this one. The question was, do you support a basic minimum wage, a basic living level minimum wage here in California? And then the follow-up question was, would you support a $27 an hour minimum wage here in California? $27 an hour. And I looked at the person, first Democrat comes through, of course I support that. The next one, of course I support it. And the third one, of course I support it. And I'm the last guy. I look at the person, I go, I absolutely do not support just handing someone $27 an hour because they work at McDonald's. I'm sorry, I don't support it. It's offensive that you even suggest that. I would support a pathway for them to get to $27 an hour, but it's going to require promotion, manager, et cetera.
Sure.
You know, like, hey, imagine that. It's a career path. But handing them $27 an hour, because here's the thing. You give them $27 an hour, the rest of us don't get a pay raise, and we're all going to pay a crap ton more for everything we buy, food, et cetera, because someone's getting paid $27 an hour to flip a burger at McDonald's. I'm sorry, that's not a practical use of money. And they just want to hand people everything.
Well, they want to say that. That's lip service. They want to say that. I agree with you. I don't think $27 minimum wage would necessarily make sense fiscally, but a living wage is a good investment in the economy.
Yeah.
If like $15 and even $15 is still like, you know, not a lot of money, but it's more than what a lot of these folks are making now. And in a lot of states you can get by on $15 an hour, but it's just, you know, to have that as a minimum wage, and then like you said, you know, a pathway to, you know, whatever management and everything else. But when people see, this is the thing that bothers me about people with platitudes. You give them an idea. You know, like I was stoned when I came up with that Department of Labor idea, right? And I still think it's a goddamn good idea. So I say to people, and they look at you and they go, well, why not? I mean, we're supposed to be about business in this country, you know. Or supposedly, you know, the Republicans, and now last 45 years or so the Democrats, because they've just eschewed all labor and they've just eschewed all minorities, and they just want to go after the white collar professional, which they don't know why they're losing. You know, Jimmy Dore likes to say that if you got a Republican running against a Republican, the Republican is going to win every time. So you can't pretend to be a Republican light, you know, and then you're surprised you lost. You know what I mean? But no, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. And I think, but I think that it is possible to have a $15 minimum wage, just like it's possible to have single payer health care. And the talking points that big insurance like to throw out at folks, it's like, well, it'll be like Britain. No, it'll be like Medicare is what we have. And your mom's on it, my mom's on it. It works. They get their MRIs, they get their medicines. The VA is another story. Yeah. The VA is a provider model, not a paying model. Medicare works because it's a paying model. So my mom picks her doctors. My mom gets what she needs. The VA doles it out as they see fit, and they're wildly underfunded and wildly understaffed and wildly underpaid. So they're not in the same medical profession that, say, a doctor or private practice is. But single payer would fix so many of our problems. And college, okay, you're 53. College was free when we were kids, remember? This isn't even like 100 years ago. This is like in the 80s. I paid $100 a quarter to go to Cal Poly Pomona. My entire bachelor's degree cost like $3,000. And now Cal Poly Pomona is, my brother went to Cal State Fullerton, by your house. He was paying $400 a semester. I was paying about $100 a quarter, and I was older than he was. So it went up to $400 a semester by the time he was going to school. Now Fullerton's like $6,000 a semester, and Cal Poly's like $5,000 a quarter. It's ridiculous. And now these kids, an 18-year-old kid who can't get a home loan or a car loan, but he can get $100,000 to go to college. It's a total scam. Yeah. It's a total scam to sit there and act like I'm blowing fairy dust up someone's ass because I think college should be free. It was free. And then government got smart and they're like, hey, well, we'll stop subsidizing. And then the college is like, all right, well, we're going to raise the tuition because we know they can pay it. And now it's out of control.
Well, and the $15 an hour would be doable. $27 an hour is just, come on, that's just stupidity. You're throwing money at a problem and thinking you're just making it worse.
Well, it's platitudes.
And you're right, though. And you're right, though. You have to, like that's the thing, and I'm actually trying to work with. There's a guy who's the chairman of the Orange County Libertarian Party, and I'm kind of trying to ease my way in there, one of the things we told them they're lacking is candidate support. You know, they're nice people and they promise you the world, but like any organization, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, but when I need to hit 335,000 registered voters, which is what I was faced with, 3 people isn't going to help me.
That's right.
I need like 50 people, 60 people, 100 people. Mm-hmm. And so I told them, you need a candidate support system, and you need to start. Can you believe they didn't think about this one? I said, you get your candidate support committee together, and then you have them start identifying businesses and individuals who are pro-libertarian. They don't necessarily have to be libertarian, but they're pro-libertarian and would be willing to donate money to a campaign that a libertarian runs. And so guess what that would do? If I'm in Orange County and I've identified all these donors, and now I go to run for an office, I have a network of people who are going to be willing to donate money to me. That's what the Democrats do. It's what the Republicans do.
Right.
Why would the Libertarians want to do the same thing? Because I'm telling you, it's another sad fact. I spent, not including the filing fee, which was $1,700, by the way, just for the privilege of having my name on the ballot. I spent maybe a total of $400 because I ran my campaign the best way I could, which was on social media. I wound up with 12% of the vote. I had 15,000 votes, which isn't horrible for a person who was literally only known in one city in this county.
Right. That's pretty impressive.
So, social media was effective because I could we ran one Facebook ad. It cost me $10, Abe, and I hit 75,000 people with that $10. So, you need money to run a campaign, but I don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars to run a campaign. If I had, I'd be willing to bet you if I had $50,000, I could have won that election. Well, and I wouldn't have had to do too much work.
Well, see, and like two things, kind of piggyback on what you're saying. So the Republican girl that I had in here a little bit ago, that is one thing. It's like she's a log cabin Republican, which means she's pro LGBTQ and all this kind of stuff. She's very, very socially conscious, very good person. But so I kept bugging her. Well, why don't you just go be a libertarian? They don't really give a shit. And she said exactly what you said. She goes, well, they seem to be more concerned about getting the name of the party out there, but there's no infrastructure. She goes, I don't see. There's guys running in Texas right now. She goes, I don't see anything, even on social media, for them. It's like there's no infrastructure like there is here, and I think I could learn a lot more here. And then there's a woman out here named Seema Hernandez who ran against Beto O'Rourke in the primaries. And I was surprised this story didn't get covered. It should have, because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York is getting all kinds of coverage because she upset the apple cart. But this woman, on $4,000, got 250,000 votes in Texas in the Senate primary. And Beto O'Rourke's campaign cost $5 million, and he got 675,000 votes. So you're sitting there kind of going, wow, she paid about 0.002 cents for every vote. He paid like $6 a vote. And you're just sitting there going, whoa, that's just insane. And she got out there, she canvassed. I mean, she was up and down the state, and Texas is a big state. She lives in El Paso, which is 8 hours from Austin, and then you're going all the way up to Dallas, and you head up to Lubbock, and she was everywhere. And just her and a couple of people, but that's the kind of the sadness. I heard an interview with Jimmy Carter the other day because it was his like 93rd birthday, and they asked him, would you be able to run today? And he said no. And he goes, when I ran against Gerald Ford, we had RNC and DNC money. That was it. We didn't have all these corporations giving us money. When I ran against Ronald Reagan, he didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. It just, back then, TV ads were PSAs. When a guy was running for president, those were PSAs. And so, the party was able to get ads on TV with as a PSA. Now they don't even do that anymore. You got to pay for that shit. So you got to raise at least $200 million to be considered serious just to run for, out for president. And like you're saying, this incumbent person was $500,000 for a county supervisor seat. That's insane. That's a lot of money for a county.
And that's because all she did for 4 years was fundraise. And the reality of the situation is like here's the other thing about the uninformed electorate, and focusing on things that, number one, should be obvious why it's the way it is, and number two, it's not really an issue. So like in my campaign, we raised $3,500 total. That was it. And my team was really worried about that. And I kept saying to them, you know what? All my life, I've had periods of time where I don't work for 8 months because I'm generally a freelancer. And I've had times where I don't work for 8 months. I've never been homeless. I've never gone without a meal. If you see me, you'd know that. And I know what I'm getting at is I know how to make do. And so we're going to make do with whatever we get. This is what I told them. So we spent $1,700 on the filing fee and $400 total for everything else. And so it's $2,100. And the lady who was attacking me, one of her attack points was he stole money from his campaign because he raised this much money and he only spent this much money. So where's the rest of the money? Well, hello, you dumb jackass. It's still in the fucking bank. I mean, you get paid $5,000 and you have $2,000 in bills. It doesn't mean the other $3,000 disappears. You still have it.
Right.
And that's like, she made this huge deal about it. And then another funny one was I told somebody on Facebook, I live in one city and the bordering city to me has this huge racetrack that the owner is like 90 years old. And he's really concerned that if he dies, they need to do something with that land and it's not zoned well. So he proposed a measure 2 years ago. It lost by 400 votes. So this year he had another measure. He improved some things and I was supportive of it. Number one, it was in my district that I was running for. And number two, it's literally, if I were to jump out my window that I'm next to right now, I would land in that city.
Right.
That's how close I am.
Right.
And so they were asking, well, why are you supporting this measure? It's got nothing to do with your city. And why are you supporting it? And they asked, are you voting on it? And I said, this is what I said to them. I'm voting for whatever's on my ballot. Mm-hmm. Well, now that same woman is going around saying that I committed voter fraud by voting on that measure. That's the only one of her complaints that I've answered. And I asked her, how do you know what I voted for?
Right.
Well, I don't. Well, then how can you go around telling people that I voted for something that you don't know what I voted for? I said I voted for what was on my ballot. Guess what? I don't control my ballot. So you don't know what was on my ballot. Was that measure on my ballot? No, it wasn't. But do you know that? No, you don't know. So shut the hell up.
Right.
Stop scaring people away from running for office. And that's one of the big pushes in California right now. You know, you mentioned De Leon. I mean, that guy has helped destroy our state. And now there's a city here. They're districting all of the city council positions. So you have at-large elections where it doesn't matter where in the city you live, you can run for the city council positions that are open. Or if it's districted, you can only run for the district you live in. Now, why is that a problem? Well, they're doing it because they say that there's lack of representation. So an example, Anaheim. Everybody knows Anaheim Disneyland is there. And it's a huge city, and they used to be at large until 2014. Mm-hmm. And they switched to districts because 4 out of their 5 council members lived in one part of the city. The other one lived in the other part. So naturally, there really wasn't representation in the rest of the city. And Anaheim's very diverse. There's the rich area, and there's the poor area. And, of course, all the candidates lived in the rich area. So the rich people were getting the representation. So districting made sense there. But rather than use your brain and say, all right, it makes sense there, but it doesn't make sense here, they're trying to force it on every city. So we have a city over here called Stanton. And it's maybe 15 square miles. So it's a tiny little city. Right. But it has exactly 1.5 square miles of residential. And the rest of it is just industrial. And they're being forced to district. Well, it's now the second election cycle since they're forced to district. And guess what? Lo and behold, 3 of their seats, nobody's running. Now what are they going to do? Mm-hmm. They have term limits, so the person has to leave. And they have nobody running for city council. So they're desperately pleading with people, please run for the office. But what are you going to get when someone does that? You're going to get somebody who felt like their arm was twisted and they had to do it. They didn't really want to do it. And I'm sorry, but that's not who I would want representing me. I want somebody who was passionate about it and went out there to do it. I mean, that's why I'm actually considering, this is the first time I'm actually mentioning this publicly, I'm considering running for city council here in Buena Park in 2020 because the guy's terming out And when you think about it, my name's already been on the ballot in front of every person that would vote for me for city council. So the name recognition is there. I have some money left over, as we just talked about, in my campaign war chest, big giant war chest that I have. Right now I'm about 60% sure that I will do it and 40% that I won't. And the biggest reason is crazy people like this lady. Do I really want? I don't get stressed out by it. And I kind of have a feeling if you were in the same situation, you'd be like me. You'd be like, fuck you. Who cares?
Right.
Say what you want to
Right.
say. It's my wife that gets stressed out about
Right.
it. She was worried that the lady was going to show up at our house. And what do we do? What do I do if I see her at the door? What do I do about this? What do I do about that? And I'm not trying to say that's irrational. Some people have that feeling. What I'm saying is, come on now. This lady's crazy. She just wants to talk shit.
Mm-hmm.
But do I really want to have 5 other people come out and talk shit about me and have to deal with that? I don't know.
Right.
I haven't decided yet whether I really want that or not. But that scares good people away. Then you district places where they don't need it just because you're like closing your eyes and blindly doing what everyone else is doing. How about we start finding solutions to all the problems by using our brain and thinking things through? That's an area where I think libertarians have it right. The federal government should not dictate everything. The state government should not dictate everything. You should leave it up to the local municipalities to figure out certain issues on their own.
Well, and that's where you get rid of the parties. You move to publicly funded elections on all levels, including president.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a certain amount of money, and instead of those people donating millions of dollars to a campaign, they could give that money to charity and have the charity help fix some of the social issues that are going on. Because that was another thing during my election. I looked at this group of libertarians. There was like probably 150 of them in the room. And one guy was there. He was running for governor of California. And he had spoke, and now it was my turn to speak. And I said, someone said, what's the biggest problem you've been having? I said, okay, we're all libertarians. We sit here and we say, the solution to social problems is private charities should get donations. We should do away with income taxes so we have the money and decide where to put that money. How many of you here have received an email from me asking for a donation? Every single person rose their hand. Said, and in that email, didn't I ask you for just as little as $1? Yeah. You want to know how much money I got from you guys? Nothing. Zero. How can you stand here and say that donations to charitable organizations is the solution when you won't even donate to a candidate who has the same ideals as you do?
That's right.
How can you stand on that principle? So, hey, let's do away with that shit, and let's just, like you say, publicly funded, no parties. I think unfortunately, it's kind of like you said, they're never going to stop collecting taxes. I also don't think we'll ever get rid of the parties. I wish we could, because that is the problem. We must get rid of political parties, because right now it's why people ask me, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Well, I'm neither. And they ask you that because if they're a Democrat and you say you're a Democrat, they're going to open up their checkbook and write you a check. They're going to vote for you. They're going to tell all their friends to vote for you. But if you say you're anything but a Democrat, they're going to do the opposite. They're going to tell everybody not to vote for you.
Right.
And the reality is, you heard what I said earlier, that I was in a debate with 4 people, me and 3 other people, and the other 3 people were Democrats, and yet we agreed on core issues.
Right.
So and that's the other thing. You get 5, say you have 5 issues on your platform, and you agree with me on 4, but you disagree with me on 1. Why does it mean that because you disagree with me on 1, you automatically, and these are 5 big issues, not, one really big one and then 4 teeny tiny ones. They're all 5 big issues. If you agree with me on 80% of the issues, why wouldn't you at least consider voting for me?
Right.
And yet that's what would happen. Oh, no, I don't like your stance on crime, and so I'm not going to vote for you. But I love your other 4 issues.
Well, that was the same shit I took for Ron Paul and to some degree Rand Paul when I was pushing Ron Paul for president a few times that he ran. He's pro-life. Okay, so but the other 99.999% of shit that he's saying, you're not cool. You're cool with all the wars. You're cool with the Fed. You're cool with all this stuff because he's pro-life, which, by the way, the president can't do anything about. They really can't. I mean, now Cheeto Jesus can pick a Supreme Court justice and kind of fuck that up, but they got to still retry Roe v. Wade. You can't just overturn it without a preponderance of the evidence. So you got to retry Roe v. Wade. In the meantime, the president can't make an executive order. So it's just to sit there and try to freak people out on that. I'm like, well, okay, but you're with Hillary, who if she had an R next to her name, you wouldn't support her. If Hillary had an R next to her name, they'd pay attention to all the wars and all the crap. But she had a D next to her name.
Exactly.
So she's, any blue will do, really? Well, that's why California has Anthony Rendon and Kevin De Leon and that other guy out of Bell, spacing on his name now. But, they're Democrats, but they're corporatists. They're not real progressives. They're not Henry Wallace. They're not even FDR. They're corporatists. And to me, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian. If you're trying to do things for the people and you're not this identity politics party above all else person, you're just going to be more sensible and make more sense almost by default because you're trying to look at a solution that actually has some workable answers and not, we just don't believe this. Well, why? Well, because we just don't.
Well, imagine this, okay? We elect people to represent us, right? I mean, that's the whole point of it. And so what I did when I was coming up with my platform, and my entire messaging was this way. Instead of being like, well, I think that's important, and I think that's important, and I think that's important, I actually sat down and I watched 4 years worth of supervisor meetings, and I paid attention to the public comment section, and I literally cataloged the comments that were made. And then if someone made a comment about the same thing, I put a check mark next to it. When I was done, I picked the top 5 issues, and I looked at them and I went, isn't this interesting? Those really are important issues. Imagine that. The people came to a meeting and complained about issues, and they turn out to be the, with a capital T, issue.
Right.
And I ran on that platform. And people would say to me, well, how did you come up with this platform? You told me it. What do you mean I told you? I've never met you before. Well, but you guys went to meetings, and you told people this. And this is another problem with the system, is if the voters say something's an issue, you have to at least have an open mind. Now, I'm not one who believes that if I'm let's say I won that election, I'm on the board of supervisors, and I've done my research, and my staff's done my research, and I'm voting yes on an issue. If 10,000 people show up at the meeting and tell me to vote no, unless they tell me something that I haven't already thought of, I'm sticking to my vote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done the research, right? I did the job, and I think it's the best answer. But you have to at least be willing to listen and consider that side. And we don't have that anymore because, like you said, if you have one person, Hillary, we'll use her as the example because you just used her. She's a Democrat. She has a D next to her name. So millions of people voted for her. But if she switched to an R, those same millions of people would not have voted for her. And that's the problem. They weren't voting for her because of her policies. They weren't voting for her for anything other than that she had a D next to her name. That was 100% why they voted for her.
That's right.
And that has to change. And really, if you ask me, the only real way to change that is to just make everything we don't designate our party. I mean, if you can't get rid of the party, well, then make it so that you can't tell people, make it illegal to tell people. Like, I noticed something, and maybe you can tell me why this is. I took a trip to Austin in May, and there were a lot of signs up for, the election, obviously. And every single one of them said, John Smith, Republican for state senator. Why are they telling your party?
Right.
Is that like a requirement there?
Well,
I mean, why are they telling this party?
Well, I'll answer it, and then I'm going to let you close out because we got to wrap up here in a couple minutes. But and this is just my theory. I don't know if there's a legal reason why. I think it's just because, especially Austin being so blue, that if you're going to identify as anything other than a Democrat, you have to specify. Because if you're John Smith and nobody knows who the hell you are, you got to say Republican so the Republicans know who you are. Same thing with the Democrats. I mean, and I think they do that because Austin is just so blue. It's like this big blue island in a big red sea, right? And so I think that's why they do it. I don't think, and I could be completely wrong. I don't think there's a legal mandate for it, though.
It makes sense because it just tripped me out. I remember telling my wife, because, of course, you're running for office, your election's in a month, and I am in Texas, and I'm seeing this, and I'm going, I would never in a million years have put, Mike Mahony, Libertarian for Orange County Supervisor. I would never have done that. And yet these people were doing that. Your answer makes sense, and it's probably as close to any. I mean, as close to the truth as possible, I would imagine. That's just interesting to me. So, whatever. it makes sense if you're in a sea of Democrats and you want to grab the handful of Republicans and get them to vote for you, advertise that you're one of them.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, I gotta get ready to let you go here, but this has been fascinating, and I am really grateful that you came on. We got to do this again very soon, and especially as we get closer to the general, I want to pick your brain, get your opinions on what you're seeing in Orange County, what you're seeing nationwide. Folks, my guest has been Mike Mahony, and he's host of Nightly Rant. I'm going to have his link. And also Fitness Freedom. And I'm going to have his links on this episode, whatever you get it from, Libsyn, YouTube, iTunes. And again, you can be a bitter pill for $2 a month on patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. If this stuff makes you uncomfortable, guys, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.